Let's just kick things off. Hey, everyone. If you haven't heard me earlier, my name is Nife Olufasoye. I'm the organizing director with Black Futures Lab. And I just want to turn things over to Bakari Sellers. He's one of the youngest members of South Carolina State Legislature, named Time Magazine's 40 Under 40, CNN contributor, and also very passionate about politics and how we make our folks more powerful. So I'm going to kick it off to him. He's our MC for today. And Bakari, introduce yourself. Thank you for joining us today.
Man, Nife, thank you so much for having me. My name is Bakari Sellers. For those of you all who don't know, I'm from the big city of Denmark, South Carolina. 3 whole stoplights and a blinking light. My mom and dad would always tell me the 2 most important words in the English language are the words thank you and not nearly said enough. Shout out to Nife for pulling this together. My brother, thank you for doing this. I know many times your work sometimes feels somewhat thankless, but I want you to know that everybody's very appreciative of you lifting up these voices at a time that's needed. Shout out to the Black Futures Lab, Alicia Garza, the whole crew, Dallas, who is behind one of these boxes up here doing the damn thing. I want to say thank you as well. And to all the participants in today's panel, man, we have Kwesi Chapa. Did I pronounce that right, Nife? Chapa? Kwesi. Because I get Baraki, Bacardi all the time. So I'm trying to make sure that I pronounce these strong brothers' names correct. Kwesi from Color of Change, Wisdom Code from the NAACP. Just so many people participating today. Look, I want, at the beginning of this, I want everyone in the chat. We got over 100 people here. I didn't know what I expected, but I'm not sure I expected that. So I want everybody in the chat to definitely give a shout out to where you're from. We want to recognize where everybody's from, understanding that the South definitely represents better than any other place in the country, but you know, we'll have that debate. And I also will tell you that Outkast is the greatest rap group of all time, but I digress. Shout out to give your pronouns, give why you're here, and give where you're from. And most importantly, I want specifically for you to delve into why you chose to be here with us today, because in the words of the great American poet Sean Carter, also known as Jay-Z, you could have chosen anywhere in the world, but you chose to be here with us today. So definitely shout out your purpose for being here today. And we're gonna call that out for the next 5-10 minutes or so. So get a chance to know everybody in the room. Shout out to where you're from. I see we got 757 Virginia. Some of the best athletes in the world come from that 757 area code. Boston, Massachusetts. Shout out to Gary Williams in Baltimore, Southside Jamaica, Queens. Philly, of course. Somebody checking in all the way from Maui. Man, you got Maui reach over here? Nife, you got Maui reach? I like that, my brother. Phoenix, Arizona. Dallas, of course. 3 Stacks is the GOAT. Thank you for agreeing. I want to see some people post while they're here, though. Let's get to that. Support the presence of our Black men. That's what's up, Nancy. Thank you. Lolita, I think I'm pronouncing it right. How I can better understand and support our Black men. Thank you for that. Aretha from San Francisco, you're a mother and you want to help understand, especially being a mother to a Black child. Whitney, the best rapper is Mac Dre. Okay. Here to show up for how I can support building Black power as a white woman. All right. Jason, I want to see how I can assist. I like Mark Westcott. Privileged old white guy here to learn. I love it. I love it. I love it. Definitely got some fans of the Black Futures Lab. You guys are doing it the right way. Oh, we got somebody on here for prison abolition. Okay. Learn how to make democracy in this country work for Black men. Oh man, everybody's shouting out in this. Thank you for the love and the support on the podcast. Last one with Dr. Kimbrough. Thank you so much. Kansas City. All right. Oh, we got some teachers in here, man. Did y'all know we're going to have teachers in the room? Charlotte, North Carolina teachers. I love it. From Waikiki. You're reaching Hawaii. You got to tell me about this. I didn't know you had all of this, man. We got the reach all the way out in Hawaii. I just want to say thank you all for joining us. Now, we've been Zoomed to death, so we know what this function is. Down here in the Q&A, we're going to have some very bold questions. This is, I don't like the term safe space, but this is a space where we're going to challenge each other, love each other, uplift each other, and push through. So if you have any questions throughout the evening, I see we already got a couple questions there, but at least wait till the brother starts speaking. But if you got some questions, please throw them in the Q&A. We'll spend the last 30 minutes of this evening rapping and chatting about your questions. You know, today I wanted to answer one of these questions before I get kicked off, and I'm not going to spend as much time talking because I wanted to bring my brother in from Color of Change before we get too far along. And I wanted to make sure that you all got a chance to answer some questions I will ask you. This is going to be, Nife actually has this really interactive, so I appreciate that. So everybody kind of stays tuned in to sitting in front of their laptop or sitting in front of their computer, wherever they are. And so, you know, today I just wanted to simply start by echoing something I said not too long ago. That one of the things I've seen throughout this electoral process is that the voices of Black men have not been uplifted. And that's a generalization, I know, and I'm not saying we should be uplifted more than anybody else. I'm just saying that we should pay attention to those voices. And how did I come up with that conclusion? How did I come up with that thought? Where did I get that from? Well, I went to, I masked up. I firmly believe you can't win an election unless you knock on doors, right? And so I masked up and went out to some barbershops in North Carolina. I was in Monroe. I was in Greensboro. I was in Winston-Salem, just listening to brothers talk about how government has passed them by. And I thought to myself that if we spend more time listening to what these brothers are talking about, then we, as people running for office, as people who want to implement the change, as policymakers, then we can actually better contribute policy that lifts us all up. But we don't do enough time listening. That's what I learned even more so. Then I did an event in Atlanta with Quavo, T.I., Yellow Pain, and Big Tigger. And the same thing, I got the same message. I got the same vibe that for far too long, we were having these conversations without these very crucial voices, these voices of Black men. And yeah, I mean, I'm not discounting the fact we have Barack Obama as president of the United States. I'm not discounting the fact that we have a lot of Black men in elected office. I completely understand that. And I also know that Black women are the backbone of our democracy. Like I'm not saying this to stiff arm anybody else. But what I am saying is that particularly when it comes to democratic politics, not the number one, that's Black women, but the number two demographic in support year in and year out has been Black men. And you wouldn't know that. I used to always laugh and giggle about the fact that people were talking about a large swath of Black men maybe going out and not participating in this election or voting against their own interest. And we found that simply not to be the case. A year in and year out again, maybe not in the same numbers as Black women, but Black men have been there. And so the purpose, right? I say all of that to get to the purpose of why we're here today. And the purpose is so we can listen to many of these voices, so that we can create a space where we can have these questions and dialogue back and forth. The purpose is to uplift the important role that we have in our communities, in our families, to give us a place where we can shine the light on everything we're doing for democracy, but even more importantly, so we can actually join together and take action. Like tonight, I didn't want to wear a suit and tie. I always feel like I got to wear a suit and tie on TV. So tonight, I just threw on my black tee that said vote. You know, I just wanted to be in the moment and be here and be comfortable so we can actually have a robust conversation. And then the other thing is we have become the victim. And if you all don't believe it, their entire Senate studies, we've become the victim of the most targeted disinformation campaign in the history of the world, right? We do know that there are foreign governments who literally target African-American men and target them with disinformation and misinformation that you see circulated. And we all know, we all got them friends out there who pass off, we all went to school with them, who pass off this misinformation and disinformation. And so what we want to do is, look, I don't have nearly all the answers. In fact, Nife got me up here talking too long, and I'm about to cut that short because I'm the MC, so I got the mic, so I'm gonna just keep it rolling. And I don't have all the answers, but what I do know is that one of the things we have to do is listen to our brothers and listen to the individuals who are doing the work every single day. So this is a space for the people who work 9 to 5. This is a space for my brothers who are barbers. This is a space for my brothers who are truck drivers. This is a space for my brothers who are elected officials. You know, we probably got some dudes out there who stay at home and just take care of the kids. Like, this is a space for all of us. And my hope is that you utilize your voice. My hope is that you bring your full self here. If you feel like you can't be your full self at work, utilize this hour and a half. And I don't think we're going to be here no hour and a half, because I don't feel like sitting on Zoom for an hour and a half. But if we end up here an hour and a half, then so be it. But we bring your whole self here. And so we can actually have a real conversation. And this is a space for no judgment. I don't care. It's no judgment here. I just want to know how to have a room like this put together by an organization like the Black Futures Lab, where we can all lift up each other. Where at the end of the day, no matter where our political leanings may be, no matter where we come from, where we work, we all understand that we're in this together. And I think that's the overarching theme, that we're in this together. Old people always say these things that sometimes you don't understand. And my grandmother would always say that you can't fall off the floor. You know, it's one of them old sayings, you can't fall off the floor. It didn't make sense to me until I got a little older. And I realized what she was saying. And now it's so many of us that feel like we're on the floor. So as Black men, I think it's incumbent upon us to lean on each other, to get up together, and also realize our rightful place as being the leaders of our community, in reasserting that role as being the leaders in our community, and creating our own narratives and telling our own story, writing our own story, and letting people know who we are. So with that being said, I talked way too long. Man, they gave me this rundown, this run of show like I am, like I'm on a TV set. I just tried to ground us in our purpose. I want to know, I want to ask the audience to chat about what role they plan to play now that the election is over. Like I'm changing your question a little bit, Nife. Is that okay with you? That's cool with you? So look, I'm somebody who always believes that voting is the front door to politics, right? And if some of y'all didn't vote, which I find to be crazy, but let's talk about that too. But I want you to put in the chat group, in our chat right now, and I'll shout it out and talk about it for the next 3, 4, 5 minutes. What you plan to do now that those ballots have been cast, except if you're in Georgia, you got something else to do January 5th. I want you to talk about, now that you've walked through the front door, now that you have voted, you've cast your ballot November 3rd, what do you plan to do to stay engaged? How do you plan to hold your elected officials accountable? Tell me some of the action steps that you want to do to make sure that you improve the plight of Black men, women, and children around the world, and how you're going to put your shoulder to the steering wheel. So I'm gonna give some shout outs as you all fill it in. My first one comes from, Eric says boycotting the vote is a part of civic engagement or disengagement. That'd be my opinion, but that's just an opinion. Organizing locally for poor working folks, currently focused on defunding the cops. Amar Coon, shout out. We got a Black Lives Matter organizer. Oh, and Our Revolution, co-founder over there in Birmingham. That's what's up. Shout out. Community engagement, organizing around policy demands. That's dope. Oh, Nigel came with a learning heart. I like that. Nigel says, learn more about political power. I see you down there, Rep. Bowen. You can fill in some of these people about the power that they really have and how showing up at these meetings is so important. Engage with attending city council meetings. You'd be amazed. I'm the best. I know Rep. Bowen is here, but I'm the best type of legislator. I'm retired, right? So I served my 8 years and I was gone. But you'd be surprised how you push these people vote and they yell at you and they want you to do these things, and you put forth these bills or propositions and you turn around at the committee meetings and ain't nobody there. everybody from the other side is there, but where are we? So we have to learn. A lot of times people are like, I didn't even know. I don't know where to look. And you know, that's a part of, we have to learn the process and begin to listen to people who want to get involved. Oh, I like Rachel. Rachel said, make sure that every single politician who takes money from the private prison industrial complex is dragged and ultimately thrown out of office if they don't change their ways. Amen to that. Dealing with the issue of substance abuse. That's what's up. I think dealing with the issue of substance abuse and defunding the police go hand in hand. I think because a lot of law enforcement will tell you that many times they show up on the scene where they need mental health professionals and substance abuse professionals, where they don't need cops. Educating brothers and sisters about lobbying, that's important. Support local legislators, that's dope. Pushing local attorneys and other lawmakers on the criminal justice system. Y'all are the most engaged chat I've ever seen. I plan to continue to convince people to vote on a local level. Man, look, let me be real with y'all. Before we start bringing this in, all the guests we have in, criminal justice change. I know we always get caught up in what happens on 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue in the United States Congress, but that change happens on the state and local level. Small gatherings with neighbors, that's dope. Ending mass incarceration. I hope y'all brothers, I hope Wisdom and Kwesi are looking at this, just trying to find a place. Voting is never over. That's a good point. Registering voters, organizing small communities. Oh man, we got the National Panhellenic Council of Chicago. That's what's up. Y'all got a video in Chicago that got me 38 hot. I don't know if y'all know what 38 hot mean, but that's what we say down here. I'll let y'all Google it. That means we angry down here. Dismantle the underlying infrastructure of systemic racism at a local policy level. Healthcare, Black health awareness. I like saying this, man. Karen Bass to replace Kamala Harris. I like that. Working to build Black-led owned rural food systems. Oh, that's dope right there. I ain't see too much in here about wealth though. We're gonna talk about Black wealth tonight. You know what drives me crazy is when people, the first thing, especially a lot of my white friends, the first thing they want to start when they talk about policy with me is criminal justice reform. And I'm just like, you know, we want more than that too, right? We want to talk about wealth. We want to talk about schools. We want to talk about healthcare. That's dope. All right. So we're gonna keep it moving because y'all really didn't come here to listen to me. That's for certain. I want to bring in Kwesi. He's a senior political director at Color of Change. Now, Color of Change is, we just had this recent kind of thing with civil rights organizations in this country. And I just call it a thing. But Color of Change needs to be at every single table, right? Now, Black Futures Lab, of course, Color of Change is doing the work. My brother Rashad Robinson and so many good people over there at Color of Change. If y'all don't know who they are, I want you to go in your little, in Beyonce's internet that y'all got up, and I want y'all to go into Google and Google Color of Change and look at the work and the pressure that they're applying to people's necks. Come on in, my brother, unmute yourself.
Thank you.
What's going on, man? Tell the folks who you are, what Color of Change is, and a little bit about yourself.
For sure. Just real quick, Kwesi Chapin. I'm the senior political director at Color of Change. What in the world does that mean? That means I get on DAs and all these local elected officials. I get in their ass, excuse my language, to make sure that that criminal justice reform, real criminal justice reform, is moving forward. And that's the best way one of the ways we do it is kick them out of office. There's 2,400 district attorneys who are elected. If you need any reasoning, just look at Mike Freeman in Minneapolis as why the power of DAs are important. That's why we take them out whenever they acting bad. So that's sort of what we've done over. My role is also moving our membership, over our 7 million members that we have online now, moving them offline. Well, that was before COVID, right? But now it's moving them online to like find ways to participate. So we're more than a petition organization at Color of Change. So lifting that up. And this past year, just for those as Mr. Sellers was just talking about, we made over 6 million direct voter contacts in key states this year to make sure Black voters turn out. With one thing about Color Change, I forget everything else, is that we focus on Black folks. It's not people of color, it is Black folks making sure that we move racial justice forward. Because when we do that, everybody wins.
Yeah, man. So Color of Change has even most recently went out and tackled some of the systemic inequities we have in Palo Alto and San Francisco with some of our social media companies, and led some boycotts of some of our larger corporations who weren't doing right and doing just. So just from your perspective, the question I get the most, right, when I'm speaking to all of these companies and all of these groups is, is this moment that we're in different? Post George Floyd, post Breonna Taylor, post Ahmaud Arbery. For me, I think it feels different, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm always somebody who says that one of my political that I always use, especially dealing with Republicans in the state legislature, and Rep Bowen knows this, is you got to trust but verify, right? They're gonna tell you something, and you can trust it, but you got to always verify, right? You got to lift up the hood. So, is this moment different?
You know what? It's a good question. It somewhat is. So it's different in terms of like, we're seeing different races now come to a cause that Black folks have been screaming about for years.
Correct.
And so that's what we saw over the summer. And shout out to the allies who have come through and more than welcome to be here. That's one of the things that made it different. The corporations angle, everybody put out that Black Lives Matter statement, but like, where the real policy? So like, where it's some things change, like you're seeing some, like there's like some surface level stuff, but when you scratch deeper, there's still systematic racism is still a thing, and it becomes like we have to keep calling them out, but it's a good first step. I will say that.
All right, let me ask you this though, and my brother AJ Young just, we talked about this because one of the things that I will ask you about Color of Change is I've told these companies that you can't do performative justice, right? You can't just write a press release and put out money, but if you don't have diversity in your board or you don't have diversity in your C-suite. So what is Color of Change doing along that line? And even more, let's dig down into some of the issues that you're seeing from your perch that Black men in particular care about and how we can get them more engaged, whether or not through Color of Change or their respective communities.
For sure. So in terms of like how we handle these corporations, so yeah, we use the leverage of our members to have those, those conversations like, look, y'all just made this statement. So in fact, when all those companies have a statement, we have a big list of like, great, now we have a follow-up meeting and said, great, let's look at your board. Let's look at how are the people making decisions? Who's your diversity person, right? So diversity is not just putting the Black person in there. It's like, what are the equitable solutions that in structural changes are your company doing? And that's where the real change happens. Not just a statement or a press release or, that's nothing. I want to know, how are the policy changing? Did you hire a whole diversity person? How is the hiring changing? So all those little things add up into like what makes inclusive, especially shout out to the Silicon tech companies who are infamous for thinking about when a Black person is not in that room, like how like AI and technology, all of that link up of like, well, you see how like this impacts Black folks differently. And if a Black person not in that room speaking up, well, we look what happened with Facebook, we have known beef with Facebook, but in terms of surveillance and like, it's just a broad list of things of that corporations still have a lot more to work to do, that you just got to keep calling them out around structural changes, not just a press release. And then in terms of like Black men and like the issues straight up, what you said it earlier around like how criminal justice is like what they think, like, oh, great. So it's not just criminal justice that you need to talk about, and like it's structural racism, but particularly like you can't avoid that Black men are a lot of Black men are small business owners, independent, the barbers. So especially with COVID relief, right? And for those who experience that, try to get that PPE check, good luck. I hope you had a CPA. I hope you had an accountant, because them big boy companies were taking up all that money. So like, what does it mean for like equitable solutions for small business owners? How are we talking about tangible solutions, right? You can't just come in with that, oh, criminal justice reform, police reform, defund the police and call it a day. No, what are the tangible solutions? Because Black men are not going to put up with that nonsense. And that's why Trump was so damn effective during his time in peeling off Black men voters. Not a lot, let's be real clear, it wasn't a lot, but enough where people were saying, well, he did do a Super Bowl commercial. Folks forgot about that, talking about criminal justice reform, right? A real tangible solution, like, hey, here's what I did, right? And so, you know, shout out to Biden and Harris administration. We're gonna be looking at you, like, what are the tangible solutions you're gonna be coming to swing Black men in our favor back in, because 2022 is right around the corner.
And to that point, you know, he's appointed one Black male senior advisor in Cedric Richmond. And shout out to General Austin. Like, a lot of people don't know who General Austin is. You know, there's always a big four cabinet positions, always: Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, Attorney General, and I'm blanking what the other fourth one is. But anyway, it'll come back to my head in a second. But this is one of the first times in a long time you've had, I mean, outside of Attorney General, you had two Black under Barack Obama. But Treasury, thank you, Carla. Treasury, it escaped me. So of the big four, you actually have General Austin, who is there. The first time in the history of this country, you have a Black Secretary of Defense. So tell me what outside of those things in the cabinet, because all of a sudden now people want to talk to me about the qualifications of everybody in the cabinet. It's so funny. People want to come to me. People want to come to me and talk to me about like debate the merits of the Small Business Administration and, you know, debate the merits of the Transportation Secretary. And I'm like, we haven't cared. So talk to me about outside of the cabinet. Let's set that aside. What are you planning to do, and how are you planning to engage this administration around the issue of Black folk, particularly around the issue of Black men?
Yeah, so first and foremost, we're going to treat Biden Harris like any other candidate, right? Or sorry, elected official. You know, the people elected you, right? So that means the people get to hold you accountable. And so what that means is engaging our members and other folks who want to come along with the ride in real ways of like, what are the tangible, so talking about the tangible solutions, really lifting that up. That first 100 days is going to be critical to like making sure that one is going to be a shout out to see what, well, is Biden really looking for Black issues? How is he prioritizing? Yes, COVID is going to be coming out, and we understand there's a lot of relief, but there's still some racial equity lens that can be given even on that COVID bill. So lifting up that around, but also looking at what are the real police reform, right? We have some big, hairy things that are left on the table from this year that are going to be carrying over to that new Congress and new administration, whether, especially if it goes left in Georgia, which it won't, because Georgia folks got it together, hopefully on January 5th. But if it does go the wrong way, it becomes a whole different strategy where we have to lean on the Biden administration to do some executive orders. You got the power, use it. What you doing?
That's tough though. I mean, you just said mouthful right now. You know, a lot of the things, this is why Georgia's so important, because a lot of the things that we want them to do and being bold and progressive, it requires both of those victories down in Georgia. Man, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your efforts. Thank you for all the work that you have done. I'm excited to have you as a part of this conversation. I mean, I'm even more excited to have you where you are. God put you in that place, and you are doing a really good job at it. Somebody somewhere is definitely looking down on you and saying, job well done. So with that being said, my brother, we are going to kind of move over to asking the audience. I want you guys to be somewhat participatory. If you are interested in building power this election cycle, or since this last election, building true. And you know, I've always told people that that when Stokely, he wasn't the first person to utter the phrase. It was actually Willie Ricks actually coined the phrase Mukasa. But Stokely Carmichael would always, you know, when he was in Mississippi, he echoed the phrase Black Power, and it would scare white folk to death in the South. But Black Power meant Black political power. It meant Black economic power. It meant self-sustainability. And so if you're interested in rebuilding that type of power, I need you to put a plus sign in the chat, because I think that's what we're all trying to do, is build that type of power in our communities. And then if you got some ideas about how to do it, because one of the things I don't have a lot of time for is the foolishness that we participate in, which is everybody diagnosing a problem and don't nobody have no solutions. And so your solution could be the wildest thing on earth, but I want you to throw it in the chat, because sometimes it takes the wildest thing to reimagine the way that we should construct these systems in our country. So with that being said, and don't forget, drop your questions in the Q&A. There are such things as stupid questions. We will call them out when we see them. But hey, it's family. You know how that is. Just imagine that that you get jived a little bit. We all sitting around chilling. So I now want to introduce and bring forward Wisdom Cole, who is the National Organizing Manager for the NAACP Youth and College Division. Wisdom, make sure you say what's happening to my homeboy, Aubrey Hooper. Make sure you say what's happening to Reverend Barbara over there for sure. We'll let you tell everything that you do. And David Bowen. David is from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Props go to David, because it was David by himself that got Giannis to re-sign with them boys.
I wish it was.
And you get 3%. You get 3% of that 228 over 5 years. I don't know if you knew that.
We can do something in the hood with that.
Yeah. But David ain't new to this. And unfortunately, though, with me, we were supposed to be in Milwaukee for the DNC, man, and that ain't even. Yeah, man. The Rona wouldn't let us be great, man. But shout out, he was actually on the board of supervisor in the 10th district, Milwaukee County Board of Supervisor. He was the youngest member on that board, and one of the youngest Black elected officials in Milwaukee history. He's currently a member of the General Assembly. What's going on, fellas? How y'all doing today?
What's going on? Blessings, brothers.
Thank you. So, David, I'm gonna start with you, and then we're gonna shift over to Wisdom. I want to ask you two very distinct, specific questions. I want to talk to you, David, on how you balance when you get elected, how you're not just a representative for Black folk, but you're a representative for all of Milwaukee, but you walk into that chamber understanding your experience, bringing your whole self there and trying to improve the plight of Black folk. How do you find that balance?
Yeah, I mean, that's the key right there. You got to bring everything with you. And I love the chance of, of all the tough things that we had to deal with this year, with COVID-19 and, the upfront, close and center killings of Black men and women all across this country. It sparked us to be able to build those connections to the street all over again. So especially here in Wisconsin, we have one of the largest protest movements in the country that consistently goes out every day. So they just passed 200 days. And I know young brothers and sisters from that movement that have a direct access and connection to the state capitol now. And being able to also bridge that with white legislators that are in rural areas of our state that have a much different view, much different experience in Wisconsin as well. So just being showing up fully as myself is one of the most important things that I can do. While I still got the gray hairs to prove that they don't always listen, and you served in the state legislature as well, you already know we are fighting for a future that a lot of people always don't understand or don't always want to get behind, but we know for a fact that it's from the ground up, the people that end up fighting for it that make it happen.
Man, I admire you, man, from afar, because in this in the South Carolina General Assembly, man, we ended up becoming in a super minority. They didn't need us for anything, and my job was the definition of insanity. I went to work every day just hoping that things would change, and it never did. Wisdom, you find yourself you kind of like J. Cole's middle child, right? I love that, because you're connecting two generations. You're at a legacy civil rights organization that is still very much needed today. I ain't gonna even start with the conversation about is the NAACP needed, because I don't feel like that's a fruitful discussion. is still very much needed today. How are you bridging that gap when it comes to young Black folk in the NAACP and the work that's needed in especially the role that you have?
That's a great question, Bakari. Thank you so much for that. So when I think about my role as a national organizing manager in NAACP Youth in College, I'm 27 years old, and I get to run and work with young Black people across the nation to really engage other young Black people in what does it mean to turn out and to vote. Like I keep telling all my friends this year is the year I've been the most civically engaged in my entire life, right? I didn't just all of a sudden just wake up and be like, I have to do something about it. I've been engaging and working with young people across the country for some time right now. I think with the NAACP, with any great campaign, you recognize about how you can make a stronger organization even better. And so what that means for me in the Youth and College Division is making sure that we put young people in positions of power, and not just making sure that it's performative power or they just have a seat at the table, but actually have decision-making power. And so if you look at the NAACP in the 3 years that I've been here, you see a vastly different NAACP than you saw in 2018. One of the youngest people elected to be a state conference president is in Georgia right now, working the Georgia election. Right, all across the country, we see young people popping up, continuing the protests that they've started this summer, and ensuring that the NAACP is being the #1 or #2 organization who is responding on the spot, but also making sure that they're engaging young people and hearing their voices out and making sure that young people are at the forefront of that movement. Oh, you might be muted still.
Tripping, I should know that. I'm muting myself. Fernando in the chat asked a question: how do we get more Black men into local elected office? And so that's to both of y'all. So Rep Bowen and then Wisdom both. Tell me what you're doing or what we should be doing to encourage young Black men to run for office. What the NAACP is doing to cultivate that new generation of leadership. And more importantly, man, what frustrates the hell out of me is I graduated from Morehouse. I love my Morehouse brothers to death. But everybody from Morehouse graduate want to run for office, and the first thing they do is they buy campaign T-shirts and then they post pictures on Instagram all day. And I'm like, man, if you don't knock on the door, if you don't raise some money, if you don't get out here in the community and do these things, people simply don't know how to run for office. I mean, they run these Instagram campaigns. So Rep Bowen, well, how do we get to Fernando's question? How do we get more young people engaged? And then from your perch, Wisdom, what are we doing to teach and encourage these young people to run for office? Once you leave a leadership role in NAACP, the next step is for you to be on somebody's city council. That's just point blank, period. So fellas, talk to me.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is to believe in young Black men and just show them the way. I think of, in my bio that you're reading, I'm one of Milwaukee's youngest elected officials until my mentee beat me. He beat my record, right? I got elected at 25, he got elected at 19. So it's like you got to have a chance to really just kind of show our young people the chance to be able to let them understand how this works, and really just make sure that they have that path that you talk about. It is not just the social media portion. You got to really get down into the community, building relationships, really dissecting the issues so that you can really connect with residents and let them know that even though you're young, you have what it takes to manage budgets over $1 billion, that you have what it takes to dive into systemic generational issues that have been holding your community back for quite some time. And, and not play with this thing. If you want to go play in the sandbox, go over there. But over here, we are literally trying to shift the trajectory of our community and make sure that we have access to 21st century jobs, make sure our communities are being invested in more than just criminalization, but actually putting dollars and resources where our mouths are, that if we believe in this community, that we're going to invest into the services that we know that our families need and that are focused in prevention.
Wisdom, same question.
Most definitely. I'm gonna just build off of that in terms of what I firmly believe is that you have to meet our people or meet our community or meet young Black men where they're at. And so where I sit in my position, I'm really about making sure we're engaging the community in all aspects and making sure that they're trained on how to run these campaigns, right? Like you said, people buy the shirts, they post on Instagram. A lot of us are influencers nowadays. And that's the way that we think that elections are run. But elections are run, like you said, by knocking on doors, by engaging people, by that face-to-face interaction. We recognize in the COVID-19 pandemic, we couldn't necessarily do that. And so we had to alter the way that we did the work. we had to recognize that we couldn't take out that personal face-to-face contact, right? We had to make sure we did some workarounds, do some no contact canvassing, but we also needed to make sure we had a strong digital presence, not just on social media, but through SMS, through digital presence, through direct mail, through radio, through all those kind of things like that. So making sure that young Black men have the skill, right? This is a national pandemic. Thousands and thousands of people lost their jobs. And so something that I take pride in with my job is that I had the opportunity to hire over 160 young people to send text messages all day and learn the system, right? Learn how this civic engagement process actually works from the inside out, and not just be someone who's responding to it, but somebody who's also creating it in their community and engaging with other young people, right? We have young Black men who, and I want to shout out the Omegas at South Carolina State, who work together to canvass their community and make sure that everybody had a Vote For Me card or some type of QR code to make sure they could check their registration, making sure they had all the information for who's on the ballot. They were out there canvassing the community together because they had the information and had the resources. Oftentimes people ask, why are young Black men not engaged? You're not asking young Black men. You're not engaging with them. You're not talking to them. You're not creating spaces for them that appeal to them, that allow them to be part of that process.
That's good stuff right there, man. That's important. You got to meet voters where they are. And I think that, and particularly Black men, we go out of our way to meet every other group, right? But nobody wants to focus on Black men until like 2 weeks before the election. And now they like, Bakari, can you call Charlamagne and can y'all go do like a barbershop tour together? I'm like, wait a minute, what? Like, where y'all been the last 2 years? So some of the issues that you're seeing right now, I firmly believe, Brett Bowen, the number one issue that we have on our plate is COVID, right? I just think it's been devastating for our communities. It's been devastating for our businesses. So from a public health and economic perspective, it seems to be number one. But what are some of the other issues that you're seeing, particularly when it comes to Black men, that we need to that we need to focus on, that we need to hone in on? Tell me what those issues are that you're seeing.
Yeah, I think essentially it's access to to the growth, it's access to where we're seeing the areas of the economy that are growing, and we might have Black men that are considered essential workers, but they aren't making essential benefits or making essential wages and salaries, and they're not being provided with the opportunity to be able to own a piece of the massive growth that you're seeing for the wealthiest people in this country, compared to everybody else that literally is helping this whole country run along, even through a pandemic, and they're taking more risk than everybody else because they're working a number of service sector jobs, and they also should have the chance to elevate into other areas of the economy as well, into other professions too. So I think that's one of the biggest things I'm also seeing, and that's with providing, and then also with purpose. We know that with access to be able to elevate in the economic ladder, you need access to the training, to the education. You need access to the funding to be able to go to school. So we've been hurt the most by the higher cost of the increasing cost of education, the increasing cost of being able to get trained and things of that nature. If we are able to close that gap and really create pathways at a much younger age, a number of national advocacy groups talk about being ready by 21, opportunity youth being on the fast track to be trained and get access to the economy so they can start earning dollars and building their legacies, the better that we can make sure that everybody's taken care of.
Wisdom, one of the questions I wanted to ask you, and I think Bo, I try to remember, I think it was Bo asked a question about, was there something comparable to Emily's List for Black folk? And there is Higher Heights for Black women. It's an organization run out of New York, in terms of supporting. It's a PAC that supports and uplifts Black women. I don't know of one that deals with Black men who want to get into politics. So maybe that's something that we take from here, Nife and Rep Bowen and Wisdom. Maybe we come together and create this kind of PAC for Black men who want to run for office. I think that's something tangible we can do out of this.
Shout out to the Black Millennial.
With Wes Bellamy, and also Collective PAC, who do great work, but nothing specific along the lines of Black men. Wisdom, what's a good example? I mean, now that the election's over, like how do people? What's community engagement like and around what issues now that we're not going to get them registered to vote? And how do we sustain that same energy that the Qs had at South Carolina State around November 3rd without Trump in office? How do we sustain that same energy to rebuild our community locally, state level, and then be there when we need them again in 2 years?
Yeah, so I think what I talk about with my young people all the time is making sure that we're engaging in democracy 365 days of the year, right? Just because a certain person was elected in office and just because we feel like it's a victory doesn't mean that we can't stop stepping on their necks. And something that I always kind of work on in our youth voting rights space is making sure that voting isn't just tied to voting, but tied to key issues that matter to young Black people. And for the purposes of this conversation, what are the key issues that matter to young Black men? And so when I'm engaging with our youth and our young adults, right, we're convening together, we're talking, we're having these discussions, we're pulling in non-traditional leaders, right? You know, oftentimes the NAACP may have this image of the suit and collar and tie and everything. So that's why I also chose to wear a shirt. And I actually almost wear the same shirt, Bakari. We got that one too. But making sure that we are bringing everybody into the space and hearing all their voices. And so the things that I'm hearing right now are things around student debt and enrollment in higher education, right? As we see in this COVID-19 pandemic, less Black students are enrolling in higher education, right? Less Black students are seeing the resources necessary to sustain themselves in higher education. And so once we emerge from this pandemic or whatever may happen in 2021 or 2022, what does the future look like for young Black men, right? Those are questions that they're grappling with and ensuring that they do have a future, right? If the government is not going to provide it for us, then we're going to make sure we provide it for ourselves by any means necessary. But recognizing that we do have a pathway, that we do have an in, right? I get an opportunity and a chance to meet with the youth engagement team for the Biden-Harris transition administration. And I get to talk with them and work with them and support them in actually creating policies and agenda items that are actually centering young Black men. And so what it means is us being in those spaces, making sure those spaces are open to them, but also making sure that issues of student debt, of gun violence, of police reform, like you said earlier, COVID-19 being one of the biggest ones. Today, another study showed that cancellation of rent is one of the biggest ones for young people in this nation. Those are the things that they're thinking about and engaging with and ensuring that they have the tools to grapple with it. I know as a person who also has, at least $30,000 student debt, I was waiting to see what's going to happen at the end of this year and see if I had to keep paying it back. I know it's extended for a month, but we're advocating to cancel student debt because we recognize that when we cancel student debt, the wealth gap between Black people and white people is going to decrease. And so those are things that give young Black people, particularly young Black men, a future, an opportunity, a place or a land that says, hey, I have a future here in this country and I actually have a future to build here.
I think that you hit the nail on the head as somebody who has $113,000. Well, I started with $113,000. I've been paying consistently since I was 23, so 13 years, and it's still slightly over 100. It's like $100,500. So it went down. I've been paying consistently for 13 years, and it went down like $13,000. That's crazy. I do think that we'll get to a point where you cancel up to $50,000. I think the number should be 75, but up to $50,000 worth of debt. I want to thank you for coming, hang out for a minute. Just cut your mics off and fade to black for a minute. I'm gonna bring Nife up. But before I do, I want to know what y'all's top issue is. Not issues, not plural. I want to know what your top issue is. And it could be healthcare. It could be my number one issue is African-American female mortality. My wife nearly died while giving birth to my twins. I learned that it cuts across socioeconomic levels, whether or not you're Ellen Sellers or Serena Williams, or on Medicaid. Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die during their white counterparts. That's my number one issue. So tell me what your number one issue is. You could put the why like I gave my why, but we want to hear and see what your number one issue is across the board. I just think it's dope to see what other people are thinking about. And maybe, just maybe, you'll see some other people who have like interest of yours, and maybe y'all can connect. I mean, I don't know. This is how you got to do it in the COVID stage. Maybe you can connect, and maybe we can build. Me and the brothers were talking about building a pack for Black men specifically who are running for office. I think that's something we can do. So now I got to bring to the stage, and we are running on time. I want you to see that when I moderate stuff, we move on time. We move brisk on time. We get in, we get out. I want to bring Nife, who's the organizing director of the Black Futures Lab. up. He is going to go through the census top lines for Black men. He's going to be here for about 10 minutes, and then I will reappear. Dump your questions in the Q&A if you got them. I'm gonna roll through them. I'm not gonna ask all your questions. That doesn't mean I don't like you. That just means that I'm not asking the question. For whatever reason, I may not see it. I may find something else that's interesting. I'm gonna try to get to as many questions as I can, but we're gonna bring Kwesi back, Rep Bowen back, Wisdom back, Nife. Everybody's gonna be up here to answer those questions. So Nife, the floor for the next 10 minutes is yours, my brother.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bakari. And I just want to say thank you to Rep Bowen. Thank you, Kwesi. Thank you, Wisdom, for all the insightful wisdom that y'all just shared with us over the past half an hour or so. You know, with the work that we do at Black Futures Lab, we always want to make sure, one, it's tied into our values, our passion, but at the end of the day, it's also data driven. So I want to take some time to talk through the Black Census Project. I'm going to share my screen here real quick. Bear with me. So just a little bit about the Black Census Project. The Black Census Project was an initiative that Black Futures Lab led in 2018, where we polled over 30,000 Black folks across the country around their issues, their passions, their values, but what they felt will make them powerful in the upcoming election, but also what they felt would make their life healthy, wealthy, and, you know, making sure that they had all the resources that they needed to fully live into who they are and what they wanted. So with that in mind, we pulled a few top lines that were specific to Black men and their interest in the issues that they outlined. And I think from the conversation that we just had over the past few minutes, you'll see a lot of connections between what Black men responded in this poll and what our speakers have been lifting up as issues that they're organized around, things that they're paying attention to, and also issues that, you know, got them more politically engaged. And I can also, you know, resonate with that as a Black man myself. I see a lot of the same things that, you know, we identified in the poll also showing up in my life as well. So as we know, like the top thing that we saw that was resonating with Black men was the killing of Black people by police officers. While we polled over 30,000 people, a little over 10,000 of them were Black men. And these were some of their responses in regards to the questions we posed. So 77% of Black men felt that the killing of Black people by police officers were an issue. But to that point, I think what we need to now do is think through what are the potential policy solutions to address it. So as we go back into the world and we're thinking through, you know, solutions, keep in mind that we have a large majority of us who are in alignment with the same thinking and want this addressed within the policies that our state legislatures are going to be voting on fairly soon. Low wage was also a major issue for Black men. 85% of them said that wages are too low to sustain a family. This goes back to what Wisdom was talking about in regards to student loan debt. Student loan debt stops a young Black man essentially from building wealth, from owning a home, for progressing in his life. So we really need to have a real conversation around how we're increasing wages, but also providing benefits to folks as they go about, you know, accessing jobs and trying to live their life. The next issue that we polled folks on was in regards to violence from the use of guns. Black men also named this as a major issue. In addition to affordable healthcare, Black men felt like there was a major lack in healthcare. 77% of folks actually reported that this was a major issue for them as well. So as we're thinking through policies and potential interventions to positively, you know, impact the life of Black men, this is definitely an area that we need our elected officials paying attention to. How do we make sure that we're not hit first and worst by a lot of these health outcomes? When you think about COVID-19 and how Black folks, specifically Black men, are one of the most impacted group by this virus, but also how are we setting up medical infrastructure to properly address these things? So another interesting data point that we found out. Hold on here, let me get my get my presentation together. Another group of issues that we also uncovered as we did the poll was that 76% of Black men also named affordable quality housing as a major issue. When I think about, my family and how we came to set roots in America, I came from an immigrant family. My father didn't have access to a green card at the time, so he had to work menial jobs. He had to live with his cousins for a while before he raised the funds in order to get his own housing, and that took almost 5 years. With that in mind, I think this is a major issue that we just need to address across the board with rising costs, with the cost of living increasing in a lot of our major cities. How are we making sure that we're setting aside affordable housing to meet the needs of our community? Next is violence against women. 66% of Black men name this as a major issue that they wanted addressed. Schools that fail to prepare our children adequately, along with rising costs of education. We also felt that our schools weren't preparing us to meet the needs of the world. So how are we, making improvements to our educational system, whether that's, bringing in more technology into the classroom, or training our young men how to code, or train our kids how to code. So things like that, I think, are going to make sustainable and remarkable changes to the lives of our people. Another thing that we saw lifted up in the Black policy agenda is the rising costs that make it affordable, the rising cost of college that make it unaffordable for a lot of us. 77% of Black men name this as an issue that they want to address. I myself, as a student, I went to Marquette University. I had almost $15,000 in student loan as an undergrad. And I want to name that this was with one of the best scholarships that Marquette has to offer. I still came out of that school with a large amount of student loan debt that I'm still trying to pay off at this moment. And I want to pursue law school, but one of the major reasons why, or I'm pursuing law school, but one of the major reasons why I held back for so long was because of the cost associated with going to law school. There are an inordinate amount of barriers posed in front of us, even achieving an advanced degree, not to even think of the costs associated with pursuing it. So I think we definitely need to get this addressed by the upcoming administration, but also locally, what can we do to support our Black men as they're going through college? The next thing that folks lifted up was police officers not being held accountable for their crimes, as we saw with the Ahmaud Arbery case, or we saw in various other situations across the country. We have a general feeling as Black folks that once a crime is perpetrated against us and we are harmed in some way by the state, there is no proper repercussion. There is no accountability. There is no one speaking out against us, speaking out for us, and addressing the issues that we're consistently raising. There is no, to Kwesi's point, we need DAs that are fair, that are tied to justice, that aren't tied to the same old politics of the world, and can properly address crimes that are perpetrated against Black folks. So those are some of the major themes that we saw lifted up out of the Black Census Project. The major things that came up for me was also around excessive use of power, the excessive use of force by police officers. We had 73% of men naming this as a major issue. And this is tied into the use of force. This is tied into police accountability. This is tied to all the other issues that our panelists had lifted up earlier. We had 63% of Black men saying that granting the right to vote for formerly incarcerated people is an important issue. And I also know about the work that's happening in Florida to get right restoration happen, or some of the work that's happening in Texas locally, where community advocates are moving on clean slate legislation so that folks can get their rights back in order to get more politically engaged. Just because you committed a crime at a young age. We've all made mistakes. Doesn't mean that you should be carrying this mistake with you for the rest of your life. Once you've done what you need to do, it should be left at there. It should be left there, and you should be able to move on with your life and fully participate in our democracy. The next three things that we saw lifted up was around the environment. So setting stricter emission limits on fossil fuels in order to address climate change. 53% of Black men name this as a very important issue. As we know, we're hit first and worst by a lot of climate issues, and our communities are oftentimes next to, garbage dumps, or get hit by the fallout from various industrial plants. So we definitely need policies that properly address one, our climate in general, but also specific to addressing emission limits so that we can continue to thrive in this world. 57% of Black men supported the increase and expanding of government aid for people who need it. This makes me think about COVID-19 and the economic impact that it's had on the Black community. To Kwesi's point, to Bakari's point, a lot of young Black men, a lot of Black men in general are small business owners. And as a result of COVID and some unintended consequences of it, they are now locked out of, securing money to, feed themselves, put clothes on their back, pay their rent at the end of the day. And we need to figure out what are the type of policies and practices that we need to set in place in order to, one, get folks back on their feet, but also address the immediate needs that they have right now. And then the last thing I just want to highlight, I know I kind of jumped around here with the statistics, but these are just some bolder points that we found as we went through picking some of the top lines that we saw from the Black Census Project. But making college education affordable for anyone who wants to attend. So a major thing for Black men, and 77% of them said this, was that we need to make college more affordable, whether that's making it, reducing the prices of it, or reducing the rate of inflation associated with college, or that's, altogether removing student loan debt. We need policies that make college education more affordable for all of us. And this is one of the quickest way for us to attain wealth is through education, is through knowledge building. So then we can then go into the world and build wealth for ourselves, whether that's through attaining jobs that provide wages that cover all of our basic needs and provides us with benefits that we need in order to build a family. So I just want to share some of these top lines from the Black Policy Agenda. And we'll be releasing a Black Men's Report fairly soon, and we'll be sharing that out with the world once that's ready to go. So I'm super excited to have that out into the world. We'll also be sharing out different top lines that come from that report. So keep an eye out for that. If you're a group that is also interested in gaining some of this information and parsing through it a little bit more, we have a process for folks to request this data so that you can be very targeted. One, in your messaging. If you're a political organizer, you can be very targeted in your messaging as you're talking to Black men in general, but you're also data driven as you're thinking through tactics and strategies and policy solutions that you want to push locally and at the state level in these upcoming legislative sessions. So I just want to review over those quick numbers there. And if you're interested in diving into this data stuff a little bit more, I'm definitely available and open to talking through this more with folks. And also, if you have any other questions, drop that in the chat, and Bakari and the rest of our panelists can address those in a few seconds. So I'm going to pause there, and I'm going to kick it back over to Bakari to transition us over to our Q&A section, where we'll be pulling some questions from what folks dropped in the chat, addressing them, and then we'll go from there. So Bakari, you want to take the lead from here?
Sure. So fellas, everybody who's with us, all the panelists, if you pull your screens back up, that'd be dope for us. We got everybody here. I am going to kind of do rapid fire. The cool part about y'all is ain't none of y'all, I can tell you, we got a young core here because ain't nobody just talking to hear themselves talk. You be on here panel with some deacons and stuff. Y'all be talking for 20 minutes. So I'm gonna ask each person like one question. If you want to chime into the answer to that question, then so be it. And then you get a chance to chime in, and then you can kind of go from there. Let's see. So, Kwesi, somebody asked a good question. So how do we get on these boards to force a diversity person to be hired? So Eric wants to know, what's the start and how do you go about getting on a lot of these major boards of corporations, of entities, of small businesses, whatever it may be, but you get that experience on being on the board so you can change the culture of some of these wealth building corporations and institutions.
Ooh, that's a good one. So the reals of talk is that like a lot of those board members of corporations are either friends, family, or some type of connection with money, that they have in the history or be able to bring a lot of money or etc. So that's like one of the traditional criterias. So, but that doesn't mean black folks doesn't have money, right? That's one of the things that we've just trying to like lift up. Like, well, what's the makeup of your board? Maybe if you have a shareholder lane, that's one of the, I will probably actually lift that up as probably one of the most strategic ways to actually probably have influence, do some shareholder because a lot of these are public option companies that as have an impact on really black folks. But getting on the board off the rip, it really depends who you are. But I think this is more inducive to like calling that out when you go to the company that you work with and you go on their website, you see that their board is why there's no notebook paper. That's a problem. And so yeah.
I actually sit on one public board of one publicly traded company, YCBD. We're the largest, not the largest, but we are the only publicly traded CBD company in the country. And I sit on one private board of a sports agency. And yes, on both of those boards, I'm the only black person and trying to make sure. But when I get there, like on one board, I'm the chair of the nominating and composition committee. So I'm trying to bring on a black woman on one board. I'm always, on my private board, I've helped push black internship programs at HBCUs for people who want to be sports agencies. So once you get there, you kind of have to, and how you get on it, the number one, and this is what people have to understand about the corporate world and business world, the number one thing you have is not money, but it's relationships, the relationships you build. And when you get there, you can't be the last, right? So when you break through those doors, you got to make sure that you open up for other people. But that's cool. Rep Bowen, I got a question for you. We have a couple of questions in here about law enforcement, police. What are you seeing in your Wisconsin state legislature? I mean, you guys just went through it, right? What do you see in your Wisconsin state legislature? Some of the tangible things that we should be doing to put pressure on the right people, and give me 2 or 3 different policy prescriptions, like real life. Because the thing that people are like, man, we need criminal justice reform. And I'm like, so what you want? We want criminal justice reform. And I'm like, no. Tell me the policy. The policy is I'm gonna root out systemic racism and have criminal justice reform. So talk to me about policy. So we're speaking in the same language about some of the things we want to see done.
Yeah, and that's hard because I had 30 bills over the last 6 years that we brought forward in justice reform. And only one of them was given the chance to be voted on in both houses, actually passed, signed by the governor. And then when it came time to actually fund that bill, then they stalemated it and prevented a lot of the changes that we had in the juvenile justice system. But, essentially when it comes to police involved shootings, one of the most important things for any state to do is to put leverage in state statute that any officer that does not follow in actions that actually keep people alive, they would have to face the consequence of having the law literally stopping them and being held in court that they did not take other actions that could have kept that person alive. So that's one of the bills and one of the 8 that we brought forward with the governor in the call for us to have a special session in Wisconsin. Our legislative session was pretty much over last session, really early, probably back in February. So we had one of the shortest legislative sessions that we've had. We have a biannual session. So it should have gone all the way to usually May or June. They cut it short to February on purpose, so we couldn't pass anything. So we wanted the chance to bring forward these bills. And the Republican legislature pretty much just said, we're not going to take up anything. We're not going to talk about this. We're not going to do anything about this. So people went to the streets, and you saw the backlash in the election. People went and said, well, if you're not going to listen to us, well, maybe the voters will listen to us. And Donald Trump literally made an example where he was saying his campaign's prime strategy is to say that this movement does not love America, that this movement does not want the best future for this country. And he put that to the test and he lost. So even in the state of Wisconsin, it was a huge debate because some people felt like if you went too far on the solutions that actually will benefit Black folks, you might risk losing votes in the suburbs. One of the other bills that we had as well was to ensure that, when it comes to the proven history of white supremacists making their way into police departments, that you actually have safeguards either at the state or local level to make sure that they are actually doing the research and investigating in police departments to prevent white supremacists from infiltrating police departments. One of the other bills is to ensure that when it comes to accountability and tracking data, that they actually are doing that, that they actually are holding law enforcement agencies who literally, they can all, if they want, run their departments their own way, even bordering municipalities next to each other. Milwaukee could run it one way. An officer that serves under the Milwaukee Police Department has to answer by a different set of rules than the suburb of Wauwatosa, where you have an officer there that shot and killed 3 people over a 5-year span, discharging his weapon 19 times, literally being a liability for that suburb of Wauwatosa, but they wouldn't hold him accountable and left him untouched. So literally you see those dynamics, and it's all about right now trying to streamline a lot of the accountability so officers can't mess up in one municipality and then their records of what they did can't be traced back to another municipality that might want to hire them. They shouldn't be able to ignore those things. So it's so many policy points that people can pursue, that you can put pressure on your legislators, and reforms on a local level. So maybe in situations you won't even need an officer to respond. You might need the health department to send somebody. You might need something in mental health and staff there to be able to intervene too. So there's a lot of opportunities to be able to push.
Those are all good solutions. I want to piggyback on what you said first, but I also want to go because Thomas Varela, to our last question, Kwesi, had a good answer. He said, we had the opportunity to build our board resume. And I think he meant by joining the boards of local nonprofits, build sustainability with grassroots nonprofits. It will add to your clout that you can leverage to climb into other boards, which is so true. I didn't start on a public board, of course. You start on some of these smaller boards or create your own nonprofit and show that you have the ability to do that. That's great, Thomas. Thank you for that. Rep Bowen, brought up everything that he brought up was legit. And I tell people that, the things that I would ask y'all to push in terms of policy points, banning chokeholds. I mean, that's number one. Pushing for a federalized use of standards or standardized usage of force. So, we know what's being taught in every municipality. And what Rep Bowen said that piqued my eyes, number 3, which is so true, which is that we need a database of bad officers. So when you get fired, right now you get fired from the police force in Atlanta and go be police chief in Columbus. Ain't nothing to prevent you from doing that. Now, if you at DSS or Department of Social Services, or you at a nursing home and you do something wrong, you can't go to another nursing home or you can't adopt another child, et cetera, et cetera. But if you kill a Black dude, you good. Just run to the next town over and be a liability for them. And then, of course, we have the question of qualified immunity, which we, depending on who you talk to, I say limited. Some people say abolish it, whatever. But we have to address qualified immunity. So those are some tangible things. And Rep Bowen was giving you the whole spectrum. So you can find something in there that you're passionate about to push. Wisdom, I got something for you. because one of the things you were talking about, and you have to do this, and I don't know if this is a question you can answer. I really believe it is, but at an organization like the NAACP, which is a older legacy organization, and the work that you do, how do you leverage technology in your initiatives?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the biggest hurdles, especially during this pandemic year, that we had to come across, because, you know, folks, this is a new environment. This is a new world. I remember when the pandemic hit first, I had this amazing civic engagement plan. I was ready to execute, ready to do this, ready to knock on some doors, ready to get out the vote. And as soon as the pandemic hit, I was like, wow, everything I know to be true, everything I know to work doesn't work anymore. And then I had an inspirational moment where I was like, this is an opportunity to recreate what success looks like, to recreate these measurements or these points or these indicators of success and contact and analysis and databasing. And so part of what we had to do with the NAACP is really train our members, like really go through these digital tools, make sure folks know how to use Zoom, make sure folks know all their SMS options, make sure folks can set up their virtual phone banks. I can't tell you how many conversations and trainings I've been on just to help folks get started, but it's necessary and needed. And especially when you're starting a new trend or a new organization or organizational framework, definitely need to build that up and make sure you have folks who are leading that. And so what I actually strategically try to do is I try to put my young people as the trainers, as the people who are training our older members or older folks who are there, because our older members will make those calls, right? They just need to be set up on the system and make sure they know how to use the system. They might not necessarily go into a location now anymore. They can do it from the comfort of their home, but as long as they got the system, they know how to get into it, they can start that. So I like to set my young people as leaders of the technological movement in the NAACP, so that our older members can look to our young people for guidance, for support, because, you know, I don't necessarily have to teach a young person how to use Google Drives or Zoom, frequently.
That's what's up. Nife, talk to me about the work that you just did. You just rolled out a big project, and you gave us the data to go out and support what we all know to be true. How did you all come up with the idea to do this? Or when are you doing this again? How can we support the work that you're doing at Black Futures Lab? Because this data is so important, and you guys are literally doing the work in focus group again.
Yeah, this is the Black Census Project was a brainchild of our principal, Alicia Garza. And this was actually before I joined the organization, and they kicked this off in 2018. But, you know, before we go out and organize, before we go out and knock on doors, before we go out and send all the mail, make all the phone calls, send all the texts, we first have to know what we're talking about to our people. What do they want to hear from us? What do they need change in their lives? What is the policies that they want to see passed at their local, state, and federal government? So the Black Census Project was an initiative to identify that. What are the values? What are their passions? What are the changes that they want to see? And through that process, we were able to come up with this data that I just talked through earlier. But we do plan on doing a bigger version of this, hopefully as we change gears into 2021 and redesign it and put that out to the world. We're definitely still looking for partners to support us in putting this work out there. We'll still be doing some polling to, you know, further lock in on our messaging, how we go about rolling it out. But I think over the next few months, I know everyone is developing their Q1 plans. What are, you know, that in the organizing world, you know, that's coming up. So what's the impact that we want to have immediately, but also in the long term? We know COVID and policies around now are going to be coming up for a vote. We know that we all need to go back and talk to everyone that voted in this past election. Like, it didn't end just because we have a new administration in office. We need to carry that momentum into this new year and pass policies at the federal and at the state level. But also on the back end of that, we also need to think through in our organizations, what's the capacity to wisdom point that we need in order to one, meet the needs of a changing political landscape. So is that one, training up our more seasoned organizers on digital tools? Because we know that there's a difference between digital organizing and being a digital organizer. So how are we training our folks on how to do that? How are we equipping the grandma on the corner that, you know, that brought everybody to their house to feed them, and then we talked about politics in a round table, but bring that to the digital world? So that's kind of some of the work that we're thinking through internally here, but we'll definitely be reaching out to folks on how they can support us with the Black Census Project as we switch gears, in addition to some of the other projects and initiatives that we have moving forward.
So guys, we only got 5 minutes left, and I know I didn't get to many people's questions out there, and people gonna say they could have done a better job than me, and that's cool. I'm with it. Like they got comments, criticisms, concerns, all of those things.
They wasn't what you shooting in the gym though.
Man, look, you know, I'm not, you see, I got these, you know, I've been working out. I don't know what, you know, so I had to let them show for a minute. But everybody in 30 seconds, just give your kind of closing thoughts of where we are. And then I will say something brief, and then I'll let Nife close us out. Is that fair to everybody? Everybody give us about 30 seconds of your closing thoughts, and we'll go from there. We'll let you go. Wisdom, you go first.
Yeah, most definitely. For me, what I'm really thinking about is, you know, young Black people and young Black men actually turned out this election in great numbers. And so I'm really thinking about 2022 and 2024 and making sure we keep that energy going. And so recognizing that, you know, we've been protesting all summer, and protest is a way that we fight violence. And so when we use our vote, when we go to the polls, when we vote, I know I saw a question earlier about the Breonna Taylor situation, and that is a direct correlation to how in 2019, if people don't show up to vote, you get certain people in office like Daniel Cameron, who doesn't represent our people right, represent our interests right. And so it's very necessary for us to be involved in those politics to make sure we're keeping people accountable. All 2021, we're keeping our foot on their necks, making sure we are being responsible, making sure there's accountability and there's a reporting structure. Because I think for young Black people and young Black men in particular, we have to see the changes that we want to see. Like, we need to make sure that all this turnout work we did, all this making sure we get into the polls we did, that there's actual results and accountability for everything that happened. So thank y'all so much for having me tonight.
What do color change?
For sure. I've been thinking about this since the election, and one thing I want to lift up is that if we treated Black men like white women in the suburbs, this would be a whole different conversation. That means resources, research. Black men are not monolithic, right? And so what does that mean? There's a lot of stuff where we don't know about Black voters and like what we need. Each state is different. Each region is different. So we just need to know so much more. So I'm really interested in like really pushing that forward nationally, that look, treat Black men like some white women in the suburbs, right? We're valuable. So thank you.
On that one. I'm gonna give you credit the first time, and then every time after that, it's gonna be mine. Rep Bowen, what's happening?
Oh man, I'm just so thankful to be a part of this amazing panel. I love brothers, and the fact that Nife went through the data and highlighted all the issues that matter to Black men. There are a lot of things that equate to the fact that we love Black women too, and that we are in this together. So I'm so thankful for us to be able to have this space, because this space is proving that that we need it, and we got to keep this going. So any way that I can continue to support that. Love the brothers in the movement that are here doing the work, the amazing work on the ground. And one of the things that inspired me this election cycle, I went to the polls at like 7:55, right before the polls closed. And there was a young brother in there that met me from the protest movement. And it was like, oh, Rep Bowen, like, dude, I'm here to vote. And this was his first time voting. It was so dope. And we took a picture, and I was like, I need your autograph, because literally you are the ones that they didn't expect to show up. That they did not put in enough money to get you to come here. They did not put in enough effort and focus to get you to be here, but you're exercising your power because you understand that you're making a statement, that you understand that you are influencing this whole election. So the election rolled on the backs of young people like that, that stepped up, and young brothers that understood that, you know, this is more so about power, not just political parties, but it is about power.
I just want to say thank you, man, from the bottom of my heart for participating in this. This was refreshing. A lot of times I sit on CNN and you sit across from people who, you know, sometimes don't even give you the benefit of your own humanity, right? And so it's refreshing to be amongst people who are very supportive of you and your mission, and we want to lift each other up. I firmly believe that we got to do a great job of loving each other, loving Black women, But even more importantly, we got to love ourselves. And so I know it's difficult out there. So please take some time to make sure that you're loving yourself, treating yourself appropriately, self-care. You ain't no good to the movement if you're not good to yourself. And so with that, Nife, man, thank you so much for having me. Alicia Garza, she's one of the dopest in the business. Whenever she calls me, I had to call Nife today and ask him what I was doing, because Alicia just said show up at 6 on Wednesday. I was like, all right, I'll be there. So I love y'all. And Nife, I'm gonna let you get us out of here.
All right. Yeah. Thank you again, Bakari. This space won't be what it is if you weren't moderating for us, if you weren't asking all the right questions. Quasi, appreciate you for all the work you're doing at Color Change, putting your foot on the necks of all these DAs across the country. Wisdom, shout out to you for bridging that gap between the youth and our more seasoned organizers and making sure that we're all on the same page moving forward. Rep Bowen, can't thank you enough. Got my first political organizing gig with you, and to your point around like pulling somebody up, that's what it's really about. So I appreciate you continuing to do that work. And to the BFL team, Dallas, Alicia, Kiana, Sesson, everyone else, Demetri, we got a gang of strong Black women behind this work that we're doing. So without y'all, this wouldn't be what it is, and we wouldn't be here to do this work today. So I also want to send some love to the Black women out there. Thank you. We love y'all. And then just to close out this space, like we said, it's about how we move together, how we move collectively. So I'm going to drop a link right here so that folks can sign up for our volunteer action team. It's just a link that you just have to drop in your name, last name, and all that good stuff, and then we'll follow with you and connect you on ways that you can get more engaged. So with that in mind, let's close out our space for today. Thank you to all the speakers. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us and join us, support us, and attend a bunch of the other events that we'll have coming up fairly soon. Appreciate y'all. You have a good rest of your evening.